Products that can worsen your sleep. What you shouldn't eat and drink for dinner. You ate or drank something and don't even suspect that it can disrupt your sleep. In this video, I will tell you about the top products that interfere with your sleep. Forewarned is forearmed. By watching this video to the end, you will also learn about several useful products that can improve your sleep. Let's start with something sweet. Baking and pastries. Foods high in fats and sugars, such as baked goods, pastries, or other sweet treats, can cause sleep problems. In particular, a high intake of saturated fats can cause acid reflux, which is the regurgitation of stomach contents into the esophagus and throat. And this, in turn, can worsen the quality of sleep. A high sugar content leads to an increase in blood glucose levels. This, in turn, leads to an increase in insulin levels. That is, the body begins to deal with this high glucose content. And this can also worsen the quality of your sleep. So, try to exclude cakes, sweet pastries, and other products with a high amount of fats and sugars at least 2-3 hours before sleep. And if you still like to eat some pastry or cake before sleep, and even with tea or coffee, God forbid, give a like to this video. By the way, speaking of tea and coffee, on one hand, there are people who say that yes, we can drink tea and coffee before sleep and sleep beautifully. But on the other hand, there are highly sensitive caffeine people who can drink a cup of tea or coffee 8-9 hours before sleep and have problems with falling asleep. This is especially true for older people, over 60 years old, whose caffeine metabolism generally slows down and overall metabolism slows down. And indeed, a person can drink a cup of tea or coffee at 6 in the evening and have problems with falling asleep or frequent night awakenings until 3 in the morning. In general, if we talk about caffeine, it's a very interesting product. Until roughly the 15th century, we virtually had no contact with caffeine. We didn't have caffeine in our diet. On the other hand, we say we drink caffeine and we feel good, we are alert, we are active. The question arises, what does caffeine do in our brain if we feel active and want to do something, but in turn it disrupts the sleep process? It's interesting that we don't have caffeine receptors. We can't formally have caffeine stimulate us in any way, and it doesn't give us energy. But where does it come from then? It turns out that the caffeine molecule is similar to the adenosine molecule, and adenosine is what we call a brake molecule, which is formed when the adenosine triphosphate molecule, which provides us with energy, is broken down in our body. So when the adenosine triphosphate molecule is broken down, adenosine is formed, which acts on adenosine receptors in the brain, signaling that energy reserves have decreased and it's time to rest. Caffeine was found to be like the adenosine molecule. It displaces adenosine from the receptors, blocks them, and the brain doesn't see that our energy reserves are decreasing. Because adenosine is, in a way, resting on the sidelines. That's why we feel an energy boost, but not because we got energy, but because we simply don't feel the lack of energy. And in this sense, yes, we can, let's say, stabilize and come to ourselves, but there will always be a slight recoil. And if we take something containing caffeine in the morning, even a small dip in activity during the day, then there is nothing scary about it in general. But if you consume tea or coffee 3, 4, 5, 6 times a day, then a whole series of problems arises. Even caffeine itself may not have an unpleasant effect in the evening, although it does too, but overall it increases the excitability of the nervous system. A person starts to react more vigorously to stress, becoming overly excited. And the very overexcitement of the nervous system in the evening prevents him from falling asleep, even though the caffeine seems to have stopped working. But if we have both the overexcitement of the nervous system and the very action of caffeine, which blocks adenosine receptors, naturally, a person sleeps poorly, wakes up in the middle of the night because the sleep becomes superficial. But there's another sad consequence after this. The thing is, by morning the caffeine is washed out, the adenosine waste sits on the receptors, and the person wakes up but has no energy. Low pressure, shattered, tired, his head hurts, he urgently needs to consume some dose of caffeine again and maintain it throughout the day to somehow ensure workability. This again interferes with sleep. And then you slept poorly accordingly. In the morning you need to somehow bring yourself back to normal, and some kind of vicious circle arises. And here is such a rule. Use 1 or 2 doses of tea or coffee in the first half of the day, and that's enough. Especially if you have any problems with sleep. You will notice that you will start sleeping much better. Third, Alcohol. Yes, apologists, let's say, of a healthy lifestyle say that any dose of alcohol, it causes side effects in us. And in particular, even serious illnesses can be caused by alcohol. The saying goes that an alcoholic's sleep is brief and unsettled. They fall asleep quickly, but wake up in the night, leading to restlessness and insomnia. But here too, the devil is in the details. Everything depends on the dose. If we still take a healthy adult and a dose of alcohol, in terms of pure alcohol, from 10 to 0.676 fluid ounces, well, by analogy, let's say, in dry wine, this is somewhere 10 to 11 degrees of volume alcohol. That is, 3.52 ounces of wine is approximately, roughly speaking, 2 teaspoons of spirit. That is, from 100 to 200 milligrams of dry wine, this can be called such a tranquilizing, calming, relaxing dose. It won't do much harm, and on the other hand, it can slightly relax a person, relieve stress, and even make it a bit easier for a person to fall asleep. Another situation is that with uncontrolled dosing, any, so to speak, good product or any medicine can be turned into poison. In this sense, if a person consumes significantly more alcohol, the liver begins to fail to cope with the metabolism. And in particular, during the processing of ethanol, the so-called acetaldehyde, a byproduct, is formed. And if they increase to a sufficiently serious concentration and the liver does not have time to metabolize them, they have a penetrating and even toxic effect. And it turns out that a serious dose of alcohol, the ethanol itself, may put a person to sleep. But literally after 3 to 4 hours, the ethanol decreases and the acetaldehydes increase, and the person accordingly experiences arousal, restlessness, which in itself further significantly deteriorates the quality of sleep. Therefore, here, of course, especially for people who regularly consume alcohol, it is necessary to understand that this is not a magic wand. This can actually lead to a person, on the one hand, becoming dependent on alcohol, and on the other hand, further deteriorating the quality of their sleep. So, let's understand that, of course, ideally one can do without alcohol at all, or it's better to do without it. But if you still consume it, well, some social activity or even a small dose to ensure some calming effect, limit yourself. It's 100, 200 milligrams of wine, or literally 40, 1.76 ounces of strong alcoholic beverages. Well, I say again, a person who is healthy enough, who has no diseases that alcohol can negatively affect. Every time I talk about stress, which can also deteriorate. Alcohol, incidentally, helps manage stress. But in this situation, it's better to cope with stress in other ways. Physical exertion, information detox, and other behavioral recommendations. I recently wrote a book called Stress and Insomnia, How to Break Out of the Vicious Circle. And there are exactly 12 steps described on how to deal with stress and sleep better. In the description to this video, you can find a link to the book, and then you might not have to use alcohol to deal with stress. Read it. I hope it will improve the quality of your sleep. Fourth, it's white bread or some buns, so-called highly refined carbohydrates, which also have a high glycemic index. Don't forget about the cakes, yes, pastries. So yes, the level of glucose in the blood increases. Again, the body has to strain to process this glucose, produce insulin. That is, an active process is going on to fight the excess of these quickly absorbed calories. And this can also deteriorate the quality of sleep. Try to avoid consuming such torturous products made from refined carbohydrates before sleep. Fifth, canned, especially salty products. Pickles, cherry tomatoes, etc. The thing is, these products contain a lot of sodium, well, sodium and chlorine, salt. And salt leads us to retain fluid in the body and in particular to increase blood pressure. And this in turn can worsen our condition, causing restless sleep with awakenings. I'm not even discussing the chance of hypertensive crises in the elderly. But even in young people, it's reported that these products can cause a deterioration in sleep quality. And more than that, you might wake up in the morning with such a swollen face, with bags under your eyes, that of course, especially for women, it's not a very pretty picture they might then see in the mirror. That is, reasonably limit the consumption of such salty canned products, and in particular the consumption of salt in general, and this in turn will improve the quality of your sleep. Sixth, fried meat, especially fatty fried meat. Again, the body begins to actively digest this. In general, such meat products, especially fried ones, take a long time to digest, and the body has to expend a lot of energy to do this. Interestingly, if we talk about such serious products as a roll, for example, a person ate, let's say, half a kilogram of roll before sleep. So, to digest such food, for each gram of food, you need to spend approximately half a kilocalorie to digest a gram of this food. Now let's calculate. Half a kilogram of roll, that means 250 kilocalories are needed to digest this food. And this is an active work process, this is energy production, this is the body simply warming up. You know, I just run on an ergometer and my ergometer counts calories. So I need to run for half an hour at a speed of 5.6 miles per hour to burn 250 kilocalories. These are the ones that are spent on digesting the roll. And, of course, this presents demands on the body. The stomach reproduces gastric juice, the pancreas, the liver works actively. That is, you know, like a furnace that you've loaded with fuel and all this is actively working. Naturally, this leads to the brain starting to control all this, monitor it, and sleep worse than usual. So, try not to overeat, especially fatty roasted meat, before sleep. What do you usually eat for dinner? Please write in the comments whether this eating habit helps or doesn't help your good sleep. And there might be one more general recommendation that fits all 6 previous points. Don't overeat at night no matter what. That is, if you overeat, again, it's just an active process of digesting food that will degrade the quality of sleep. The recommendation usually goes like this. Try not to have dinner 2, better 3 hours before sleep. And more than that, what everyone forgets, or often forgets, is that the total calorie intake for dinner should not exceed 20% of the total daily food calorie intake. It's not like you skipped breakfast, skipped lunch, and then for dinner, yes, 3 hours before, but you ate first, second, third courses and a bun with tea. That is, in general, try to go to bed, let's say, slightly hungry. Sure, if you're quite hungry, you can snack on some nuts or a bit of kefir, but keep it within 150 calories. Then you won't feel like you're really hungry, but on the other hand, your body won't be burdened with processing this food throughout the night. Well, now a few words about the products that can still improve the quality of your sleep. In general, let's say, there are no products that have a direct sleep-inducing effect for treating insomnia. And when they say, let's eat turkey with tryptophan, and it itself will have a sleep-inducing effect, because tryptophan later participates in the synthesis of melatonin. Well, in general, this is, of course, unlikely. However, general recommendations exist. First, consume as many fruits and vegetables as possible. And the more colorful, the better. Green, blue, violet, red, and so on and so forth. The more varied your selection, the more and better quality vitamins and microelements you will consume. A deficiency in magnesium, calcium, copper, zinc, and so on and so forth can cause problems with sleep. And you need to consume 501.32 pounds of vegetables and fruits per day. Well, preferably even more vegetables. Don't overdo it, of course, before bed. As for products with tryptophan, well, I've already said that it's not exactly a sleep aid. Still, a diet rich in tryptophan helps to ensure that melatonin production is better. Specifically, serotonin, another joy hormone, will be produced. This includes things like turkey, nuts, for example. That is, once again, a balanced, full-fledged, diverse diet generally contributes to you sleeping well, getting the necessary set of microelements, vitamins, fiber, and balanced fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. So just healthy food contributes to good sleep. Well, in particular, you can also watch my video, which is also on the channel, Top 6 Drinks that Contribute to Healthy Sleep. For example, milk with honey, just a little bit. So watch this video, you might also find useful recommendations there. That is, on the one hand, there are products that can worsen the quality of your sleep, and they need to be limited and not overeaten at night. On the other hand, a certain, let's say, balanced diet and some products can contribute to healthy sleep. Subscribe to my channel. There are many interesting videos about how to improve sleep, how to fight certain sleep diseases, or when it's time to see a doctor. And click on the bell so you don't miss my new and interesting videos.